I wish I had more hours in my day. When is the last time you had that thought? Yesterday? This morning? I have heard this phrase hundreds of times from my clients and patients. To dream the impossible dream of more hours in the day, to feel more energized and rested. Impossible, right? Or is it? What if I were to tell you that by changing your approach to sleep, you can turn that dream into a reality? That you can spend less time in bed to get more quality, restorative sleep, to have more energy, to feel more rested. You see, sleep is the secret superpower that we all have access to, but very few of us harness it. And most of us deprioritize our sleep because we're trying to fit everything else into our busy days. We know that sleep is so important for our physical health, for our body to repair itself, for our workouts to work for us. Did you know that research shows us that when we're not getting enough sleep, we can actually lose muscle before fat because our body is storing that fat as a potential energy source? Sleep is important for our brain to repair itself, to wash out the toxins and the plaque that builds up that contribute to Alzheimer's. It plays a significant role in our mental health, anxiety, depression, PTSD, addiction, not to mention how we approach our daily lives and respond to challenges. That's why research also shows us that the few days following daylight savings, we can see up to 24% increase in car accidents. Not for weeks, months, and years of disrupted sleep, but 1 hour on one night. What's so interesting to me, though, is that the way that we go about our daily routines and the way that we approach sleep actually can make our sleep significantly worse. You see, when we sleep, we go through a process. We have different cycles of sleep made up of different stages of sleep, and at the beginning of the night, we're spending more time in the stages of sleep with our physical body repairing itself. And as the night progresses, that percentage changes, and in the early morning hours, we're spending more time in the stages of sleep for our brain repair, for cognitive performance and emotional well-being. But we have to get all the way through that cycle to get through all those different stages through that process. And every time we wake up, we disrupt that process. Did you ever play Chutes and Ladders as a kid? Or you have to keep going back to the beginning? Well, that's what happens with our sleep. Every time we wake up, we disrupt that process, and we have to start over again and start over again. And so by the time we get through, every time we've been waking up, that means that we're cheating ourselves out of certain stages of sleep, like REM sleep, that tend to happen later in the early morning hours. So what are we going to do about this? Well, I'm going to introduce you to a client of mine, a single mom, business owner, and let's talk about how her daily routine works and how she approaches her sleep that can cause some disruption in there. So it's a Thursday night, her kids are done with homework and dinner, it's time to go to bed. She crawls in bed with them and reads them some stories, and she falls asleep. Then a few hours later, she wakes up, she gets in her own bed, and now she can't fall asleep. Can you relate to this? You had this happen on the couch maybe a few times? So now she turns on the television, she's scrolling through social media, and while she's trying to sleep, every time she starts to doze off, the commercials get louder and they wake her back up again. Because just like light can disrupt our sleep, like we have light off of technology, so can the sound and the noise. That's why if you need noise to sleep, it should be static noise, a white noise machine, a fan. So she finally falls asleep, she wakes up in the middle of the night, and she immediately checks the clock. And her brain starts calculating. How long have I been asleep? When am I going to wake up? How much sleep am I going to get? None of that sounds very restful. When you wake up in the middle of the night, don't check the clock. It doesn't matter what time it is. Your brain is just going to start waking up and calculating. But if you do wake up in the middle of the night and you're tossing and turning and you can't fall back to sleep, get out of bed. Do something boring. Empty the dishwasher, fold the laundry. We don't want to be spending time in bed being frustrated because then we associate our bed with that. So she sleeps for a few more hours, the alarm goes off at 6 a.m., and guess what she does? She hits the snooze button. Snooze is not helpful. I get it. It feels really great to say no to something. But what happens is that our bodies start the wake-up process about 2 to 3 hours before we're waking up. And so not only when we hit the snooze button are we saying, just kidding, But that snooze sleep that we end up getting is not restorative sleep. It's actually better to set the alarm for 10 to 15 minutes later so that you get more of that restful sleep. So she gets through the next day, she pulls herself out of bed, she's drinking her coffee. Now, caffeine also disrupts our sleep, because research shows us it can take up to 8 hours to metabolize the caffeine in 1 cup of coffee. So we want to be cautious when we're having that caffeine later in the day. She gets through the day, it's Friday, her kids are now with their other parent, and so she says, I'm going to go to bed early and catch up on my sleep. Here's another sleep myth busted. Research shows us that it can take up to 4 days to make up for 1 hour of lost sleep. So that 2-day weekend isn't enough to make up for all of that sleep that we've been missing. So now it's Saturday, she gets up, she does her exercise, and she's gonna get to go and spend some time with her friends. They go out, they have a lovely evening, they have a few drinks, she comes home, she's tired, she falls asleep. But, as many sleep experts have been quoted saying, sedation is not sleep. So, we know that just because we're unconscious doesn't mean that we're getting the restful sleep that we need to be getting. And that's what happens when we're drinking alcohol. It can also disrupt our sleep. So this cycle goes over and over, week by week, and she ends up in my clinic. How am I going to help her? Well, I'm excited to share with you a process that is backed by decades and decades of research. It's part of a treatment that's actually recommended as a gold standard to treat insomnia by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. And I'm going to walk you through it in 4 steps. How it works. Step 1 is that we need to identify how much sleep we're currently getting. So I want you to total up all the sleep across a 24-hour period, including naps. And remember, time in bed is not time asleep. So that time watching TV or awake doesn't count. And we want to get the real number. Not how much sleep you think you need, how much sleep you want to get. Remember, that 8-hour is an average. Some need more and some need less. So we get that number, we're going to average that out. Now for my client, it was 6 hours. If for any of you it's less than 5, 5 is your new number. Now on to step 2. When do we get that sleep? When is that special sleep window going to be? And so how we do that is we work backwards. We start with the earliest that you have to wake up. So for my client, it's 6 a.m. That's when she has to get up to get her workout in and get her kids ready for the day. We take that wake up time and we're going to count backwards her 6 hours, which means her new bedtime is 12 midnight. Now, midnight might feel really late for you. We can adjust the window and make it 11 to 5 or make it 10 to 4, but we're not going to stretch the window just because we want to be in bed longer. Think of it this way. If I were to give you 6 inches of pizza dough and have you spread it out in a 6-inch pie pan, it's going to be nice and thick and even. But now you get a phone call that more friends are coming over and we need to stretch it into a 10-inch pie pan. Well, now it's going to have holes and gaps in it. And our sleep performs in the same way. When we're trying to make it stretch into a 10-hour window, but we only have 6 hours of sleepiness, of course we're waking up multiple times. And that's what's disrupting that process. So it's going to be important that we start with that ideal number that we had. So step 1, we have our number. Step 2, we know when we're going to get it. Step 3 is stick to it for 7 days. I promise you can do anything for 7 days. So what this looks like, that means that if bedtime is midnight, you don't get in bed until midnight, no matter how sleepy you are. And that means that at midnight, we're turning off the lights, we're turning off the technology, we're putting down the book, and we're crawling under the covers. And we are going to sleep as best as we can throughout the night. When we go to bed at the same time every night, our bodies and brains learn when to feel tired. So it helps us to be able to fall asleep more effectively. Now, even if you've tossed and turned throughout the night, you get up the next morning, when the alarm goes off at 6 a.m., you get out of bed. Yes, if you didn't sleep well, you're gonna feel tired, and that's okay. Expect to feel tired, because then we're gonna build up that sleepiness, and it's gonna be easier to fall asleep and sleep through the night the next night to squeeze out those awakenings. This also means that you're not gonna take a nap. Did your mom ever tell you don't eat a snack, you'll ruin your dinner? Don't take a nap, you'll ruin your sleep. When we're taking that nap, we're depleting our ability to sleep all the way through the night and get through that sleep process. When we take a nap at the same time every day, our body learns when to feel tired and we start to expect that nap. Now, I'm not saying you'll never take a nap again, but we want it to be exception versus rule. And we want it to be a power nap, 20 to 30 minutes max. So now we are on to step 4, evaluate and adjust. We want to be effective, efficient sleepers. That means that 90 to 95% of the time that we're in bed, we want to be asleep. We want to fall asleep within 10 to 15 minutes, sleep straight through the night minus the bladder breaks. It's okay if you wake up for a quick second and roll back over, and wake up and feel rested and not need the nap. If that is you, you have hit your sleep sweet spot. For everyone else, what we'll see for some people is that we're still waking up a lot, so we may need to shrink the window a little bit more to squeeze out those awakenings. Or maybe you're sleeping straight through the night, but you're still tired. Well, now we get to adjust, and we're going to do this in 15-minute increments added to the bedtime. 15 minutes is enough to adjust your entire sleep schedule. So that means for my client, we did 12 to 6 for 7 days. Now we're going to do 11:45 to 6 and do that for 7 days. And then do 11:30 to 6 and do that for 7 days until we hit the sweet spot that we've fallen asleep within 10 to 15 minutes. We're sleeping straight through the night, minus the bladder breaks, and we're waking up and feeling rested. And now we have done the impossible. Instead of spending 10 hours in bed to get 6 hours of sleep, we're spending 6 hours in bed to get 6 hours of sleep, and I have just gifted you 4 more hours back in your day. Now, while we have our bodies and our brains ready, we also want to be able to help our brain to be able to shut off. And what happens for many of us is we are go, go, go throughout the day, and our brain is running, and then we get in bed and we want it to shut off. But would you take a casserole out of the oven and put it directly into the refrigerator without giving it the chance to cool down? No, we have to give our brain that opportunity to process and to decompress. So here's my homework for you. As you're preparing for bed and you're in that wind down process, take a notepad and a pen. No technology. And on the right-hand side, I want you to write your to-do list for the next day. I have to run these errands. I have to make this phone call. I need to re-watch this TEDx talk so I can learn all these strategies. And on the left-hand side, I want you to dump everything that's running through your mind. If you need to set a timer for 5 minutes at the beginning to just get yourself in the habit of it, but write everything on the page. And I'll tell you, when you're done, you're gonna feel tired. And then you get in bed. And if your brain is still running and racing, get out of bed and write more, and then get back in bed. Just like you take a puppy and you put it outside to potty, we're taking your brain and we're putting it outside of bed. You do the same thing when you wake up at 3 in the morning. We're teaching your brain that it's no longer allowed to worry and process in bed. That's not the time for it. So, my dream for you is that rather than taking your troubles to sleep with you, you take this 4-step process and these strategies to bed with you instead. Sweet dreams.